So we'll get started. We'll call the meeting to order, the marketing task force. April 9th, roll call, Deborah.
Certainly. Walker,
Yes.
Bentley,
Here.
Bollinger,
Here.
Dowling,
Here.
Color,
Here.
Register, here, Shaw,
Here.
Aya,
Here.
and Panjali is not here yet.
Welcome, Aya. So you have the minutes from our last meeting in the agenda packet. Are there any revisions or comments? No. They are approved and submitted. Thank you, Deborah. Residents forum.
Anyone here wanting to speak? As there are no speakers on Zoom, that concludes the residents forum.
Okay, thank you. Kevin needs to be out of here by.
That's I don't. That was a Monday meeting.
Oh, okay, right, never mind. So there is no chair's report. So working group update, statement of values, Kathleen.
Okay,
It's coming. It is thing. I have a few Zoom issues this morning.
and that, thank you to everyone who contributed some comments on the values. Well, obviously we'll take the vote today, just so we. Oh, I'm sorry. Sure. So, we've been through the first page, so why don't we just really quickly go through the first pages? I'm not even gonna read them, just to see what we've got, so. There's the mission that we agreed on, there's the vision that we agreed on, and then this is the proposed final language for the values. So there was only one change in the actual language, and that was to the independence and convenience. There were some comments and some discussion about what independence, convenience meant. So this seemed like it would be appropriate based on conversations that we've had. And then I just put them in alphabetical order. So the purpose, or excuse me, the general feeling that I got from the people who contributed was that simplicity was best. That way we have the most degrees of freedom to interpret these for different purposes. So 3 of the possible purposes are to highlight in marketing materials. I think in the subsequent, the other, I've got some other pages here, but they don't have to be agreed on. They're just examples, but we can take a look at them just so you can get an idea. So this is ideas about how they might be able to be used in marketing. You know, where we have some sort of description someplace in the website or materials, and then make sure that we have proof points to demonstrate that we are living the values. And then there's another page with the other ones. And then if we can go back to the list, please.
By the way, those examples are terrific for the brand guide and infusing that into the brand guide.
Yeah, I thought there was some really good language in the brand guide too. I did not look at the brand guide. I just took material that had been provided by various people. So another one would be to serve as a checklist to make sure that services investments are appropriately. Again, it's not an exhaustive list, but at least allows the board to look at and say, are we actually contributing and advancing these values? And then also to be used as community constituents, so that all of us, regardless of what our role is, are we living the values? So I think that's all. Yes.
May I request a reading of the values?
Oh, of course. I'm sorry. We did. So in alphabetical order: beautiful surroundings, connection and community, fun, recreation, and lifelong learning, inclusivity and respect, independent, low maintenance living, safety and security.
Any further comments from task force members? I think this captured it. Yeah, I captured it very well, I think, and I do believe that symbol is much readily understood by everybody, because this applies to staff, it applies to vendors, all the target audiences that we talked about can see that and go, oh, that's what.
Yeah, it seemed like everything that we added had some controversy around it. So I'm like, okay, maybe we better not, let's just stop while we're ahead.
Simplicity.
So, and any staff related
No, I actually love the idea that we're doing simplicity, because there's a lot more you can do with it if you don't. Once you start walking into really specific language, it does limit what you can do with it, so keeping it simple and the examples, that's a great jumping off point, so.
Okay.
I think we're in good shape.
So I think this would be a good time to recommend these values along with, we've already gotten mission and vision statements approved by the board. I think it's important that this get in front of the board. So can I entertain a motion for approval of these values as stated? Thanks, Mike. Any seconds?
Second.
All right, thanks.
Hold on, that was really fast. So color, I need you to state the full motion in full, please, and then the secretary will have to agree to that motion.
That we accept these as,
So you're recommending to the GRF board?
I'm recommending to our board that, we accept these values. Second.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call, Deborah.
Certainly, Dwight,
Yes?
Bentley,
Yes.
Bollinger,
Yes.
Dowling,
Yes.
Color,
Yes.
Register.
Yeah.
And Shaw.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
And I just want to say, Kathleen, thank you for the whole process and your insights on this and taking it to the next level. Really done a great job. I thought we were gonna take months just on that. Kevin, how about giving us an update on the master program?
Sure. Let me start with how this all, this idea all started. So we, many people have talked about doing a prospective buyers fair, whether it's quarterly or monthly. We met with Ann, Dwight, brought in Maxine from the GRF board because she had interest in tours in the past. And it was decided that it was too complicated to start with a fair. So that kind of morphed into tours. GRF discussed whether they could run the program and use, but they would have to probably use employees because of labor laws. And they couldn't, run a volunteer group. So that kind of morphed into a club. And so that's where we were at. Maxine and I pulled together some friends. Focus group may not be the right term. May have just been, it was a group of friends, discussed the idea, kind of morphed into a wider discussion. There was a lot of good information. One good information that came out of it was a suggestion that, and Ann knows this because you're a marketing professional, is to put a QR code on all of our printed marketing materials so that people who know that technology can do that. People also discussed the idea of a buddy program where new residents would be paired with somebody who can introduce them to the community, go to events with them. They can feel at home in Rossmore. But we also want to go back to the idea of doing tours for outside groups. Maxine and I wonder, what is the interest if we put together, my idea was to have at least 20 trained volunteers, and Ann has agreed the communications department will start the trainings, and then the club would have to do it. Because I wandered through the new residents orientation the other day and had a really good PowerPoint, so I could grab that. We'll probably ask to use that as part of our ongoing training. But we wondered, what is the interest? So we were at the meeting and Maxine was trying to find it on the phone, and it was hard to find. But I noticed today, looked at the website, at the very bottom, it has the info at Rossmore. So that's what we must get.
That's always, so on rossmore.com, if you go on the page and you scroll to the bottom, there's a very large widget at the bottom that allows you to type in your name, your email, and whatever your question might be, or whatever your interest is in Rossmore. That's always lived there, but it has been at the bottom of the page. And Maxine and Mike, or Maxine and Kevin brought it up yesterday. Is there a way to get it higher? So Javier's been playing around where we could actually embed a more info button high on the website, which would then take you directly to that box at the bottom. So we'll probably go ahead and do that. As I explained, since we're blowing up the whole website and starting over, I don't want to put a lot of time and investment into that, but this would be an easy fix. That said, people find that. I monitor the email that's connected to that. We get a lot of email. We get a lot of tour requests, and right now, all tour requests are redirected to the real estate. So if we did decide to do an ambassador program, we would play that on the marketing website pretty high.
Can you say how many you get in a month requests?
Can I look that up yesterday?
Yeah, just.
Good old
That's
technology.
many, what is many?
I can give you the information right now. I have your email right here. Oh, do you? Nice, see, that makes it a bit easier. So I went back and looked at the last 90 days. Let's see, that's not the email that was Kevin's, switching. Okay, so in the past 90 days, we averaged a dozen emails per day that were requesting more information about Rossmore. And when we get that, we send out an introduction letter along with a link to the All Around Rossmore guide and a link to the Welcome Rossmore video. And then 3 to 4 times a month, I do what's called a search engine optimization push to get our website out there. When that happens, the number of emails I get double. So I get about 24 to 26 for about a day or two. I don't do that more frequently because I can't spend my whole life doing email, but it is good to know that we can draw people in that way. And then in terms of tours, in the last 90 days, we had 36 requests come in.
Wow. More than I thought.
Having anything further that you would like
I
to?
do want to say,
Sure.
one of the questions somebody had was, is there any follow-up of the amount of requests we get? What is that, how does that interface with the amount of sales from those people? I don't know if we can track.
Yeah,
that.
there's no way to know because once I turn them over to the real estate companies, they could go to any of the real estate companies that are on the list. So who, you know, at that point, we could talk to the real estate companies, but there's also no way to know, did they come from us? Or did they come from the outside? We don't really have a tracking mechanism for that.
And is it possible that when these come in, that if the ambassador club or committee or whatever, that you can push those to them as well?
Yes.
And if we move forward with the Ambassador Club, we would definitely be promoting the companies that work with Rossmore is. And
Sure, okay,
communications,
sure.
yeah, we're not gonna be promoting outside people, which we can go in there, but.
We could come up with language that would say, if you're interested in seeing the different properties, here's our list of the real estate agents that you can work with. If you're interested in partnering with an actual resident here to see what the experience is like, here's the contact for our
Sure, you
ambassador.
would bifurcate it and
Yeah, we would be like the phone tree, right?
Like-
We're like
like-
this way or go that way, depending on what your need happens to be.
But that could be done easily with.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, very easily.
So is I'm making an assumption here, but clarifying, there would not be any real estate that you'd not be going inside any manors, and that would be made clear to people.
Yes. And that'd be, you know, we would emphasize that the training, that we're not realtors, we don't want to talk about specific properties or. That if they're interested in that step would be for them
So
to.
there's probably off limits answers that they can't.
Right.
Like
Right.
mountain money or whatever, maybe there was like that pre-created piece of paper or whatever, say, here's an idea.
That would be part of the training, right?
Yeah,
So
but all
we
the
would-
training.
the frequently asked questions that my department would put together, that would be sort of one, here's your resource guide. We would talk about exactly that kind of thing. So where should you take them? Where should you not? And really kind of explain the different buckets. Here's what's expected out of the real estate ones. What I would even suggest, and I've already started some preliminary conversations with the 3 companies on the outside who do the tours. Everybody who is an ambassador, I would ask that they go and take the tour with a real estate company so they can see, this is what the real estate company does. This is what I don't need to do. And then that kind of opens up that whole other avenue of what's missing, which is going to, or it sounds like it will be identified by the ambassadors program. This is the part that they're missing, is that hands-on with the residents who understand what it's like to live here, what it's like to be a part of these clubs. Again, leave the real estate part, even leave some of the bigger overview tour of Rossmore to the real estate company. They're very good at what they do. let's focus instead on that more personalized experience. That's what the ambassador program can do.
Like the amenities.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I have a question for Linda.
So on the club piece of it, as in any club, we've all been around for a while, most of us. As you join clubs have people who fall out, if this is gonna be a regular club, that they get together, they gotta figure out how they're going to be sustainable.
Yes.
And that's the only thing that I'm concerned on that particular, when we say we're gonna have this group of people. Things pass on, so we need to think about how the sustainability of that club is gonna work out.
I have a suggestion.
Amy, can we,
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
Thank you.
respond to that.
And then I was thinking, because there is a vested interest in the mutuals to be able to have, members buying into the mutuals. What we might want to think about this becoming a kind of a one-person position on a committee in each mutual, so then we would have 23 of these people available all the time. And it would be the responsibility of mutuals to have that person who would represent Rossmore. But they're also representing, the properties too, to really give it a buy-in to get them to, for the people who are doing it, to want to buy property somewhere. I'm not saying they're gonna represent their mutual, but I'm just saying it might be interesting to bring the mutuals involved in this because they're the beneficiary. To have people
Linda,
in.
and then Amy. Oh, I was gonna ask you a question. So from a realtor standpoint, so the realtors have been doing the tours.
Mhm.
Do you feel that this may impinge on the real estate world at all? Or is it a partnership? Is it a welcoming thing? I mean, how do you?
I brought it up at a meeting and a lot of agents did feel it was, impingement on, and we have some really, long time agents and I agree, they're really good at what they do. But I personally think that it's nice and it would be nice to have people that were already bought in a little bit more to the lifestyle and want to be here and have them come to me. I already know I want to buy it because I spend a lot of time tracking down barbecues, how many dogs, all those things that they can casually get through touring with someone. And so, I mean, it's a mix, I guess is the answer to the question. But I do like the idea of having whoever's an ambassador come and do a tour with some of the people that really have it down. They do the whole thing. I do an hour and a half lifestyle tour and then I go back and I do property. So it's never usually one thing, it's usually two.
It's complimentary.
Amy, then,
I just had an idea for ongoing ambassador to your question about longevity. Kind of treat it like the Rossmore Fund. I mean, when the fund looks for new people, they put it in the news. We're looking for another volunteer. And they put it in the paper. So it could be because of this is the global, like the fund is, that we could go to the paper and say, we have 2 openings. Somebody apply, that kind of structure, which we already have.
Mike,
Yeah, I just think that this seems very complimentary to the real estate tours. You may not have to do that on a heavy tour and you can spend all your time selling property.
and before you go, if I could just say that, one of the things we started out with this discussion on the marketing task force was how do we control messaging? And right now it's largely out of our control and we've come up with a lot of tools to help with that. One of my concerns is a volunteer group needing training, ongoing training all the time. Is there staff time to do that? Who would do the training? Who gets the messaging right? And when do we know the messaging is going wrong? I mean, we have some independent people out there telling stories. We don't know always what's being told. So I'm concerned about that. And I am concerned, as Ted is, about sustainability. all of us are part of organizations that struggle to get volunteers, and especially to get leadership. And so just some cautions, I guess. In one of these.
That was, to my point, having a strong leadership is going to be very important. You don't get into the newspaper unless you have the leaders who understand. These are the steps we have to take, who can really put the time in to organize this. When we had our initial 4-person conversation, that came up a lot. Who leads this, to be sure, to Ted's point, it's sustainable. Kevin asked about this, and I do need to clarify. Staff understands at the front end of marketing, there's going to be a lot of work for my team to do to get everything up and running. But we actually would not have the ability to continue training. We would put a very good training program together. We would train the folks who are the leaders of this group. And then the expectation would be that they would take it over. That's not to say they could not come to us. We couldn't have refreshers maybe once a year, but it can't be an ongoing basis. I simply don't have the staff for this.
Kathleen, Ted, Aidan.
So my suggestion is that you do something as a pilot. So rather than go, "Ooh, here's this big program, 20 people or whatever, take maybe 3 people that, and maybe Kevin, you would be one of them or something, and with people that you really trust and could get a lot of feedback for, and then see what that's really like. Because it's very possible that, like I said, the reason why people want somebody to come is, and they don't want to talk to realtors because they're a looky-loo. And we don't get any new business from that. It's just like, oh, I think I'll just see, have an afternoon free. Let me go see Rossmore, so.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that, if you do it as a pilot and then learn from that, how much the work is, and then that will inform a larger, and then just kind of then say, okay, well, now let's try it with 6 people. Now, before going to all the way to 20.
Forget what order we were in, so Ted, Amy, and
So I've, when I first got on the board, I looked at the history of Rossmore. There's, I think 13 videos. I don't know if you've ever gone through
No.
those.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, very informative. Why couldn't that be, we could use residents, but it could be a format like that you could click on. I want to know about clubs. You click on the clubs and someone is going to talk about the club. Not every individual club, but it'll come up. It'll be controlled. It'll be done once. It'll be really good until we decide that we need to upgrade it or do it. But it's just fix the video then. And it's always there, and it could be in different categories. Somebody wants to know about golf. It could talk about the 4 clubs. It could talk about all the training you can get. It can talk about 152 acres, 27 holes of golf. I mean, it could be,
And I think
people
that's
come for different things.
I think that's what we've said in terms of virtual tours on the market website, to have those short videos, a library of them.
But to your point, this control.
Yes.
And the people who, it could be more volunteers who want to discuss about certain aspects of it. Then we don't have the big deal of sustainability on the club and making sure the message is going out correctly each time, because people have a tendency to learn a program and then ad-lib the program, So I think that this would be a solid message all the time, and it could just be some links on it, but we could personalize it. It could be some realtors talking, if we needed that piece of it. We could have a realtor talk about the housing, the difference between a mutual and a co-op. There's some things that people need to know before they come in. That could all be done there.
Amy, then Linda.
Back to the ambassador program, why about the concern that, the messaging. So I've been here 15 years, and at least 10 of my friends have called me and said, show me around. Because I'm local. So it would be great if I could say we have an ambassador program. I'll connect you with somebody. So that is more controlled than the 10 people talking to only me or my neighbor or the person down the street. We have that already. This is a more controlled approach where residents can still tour their friends, But there's also another option that is more controlled, and you could say, if you want more information, talk to the ambassador club. Which we don't control, that my friends come in and tour.
Linda?
Oh, I was just gonna say something, but I want to, talk about what Ted said. I'm not sure that he meant, let's try to do more with video. Yeah, okay, because I feel like that people want to get in here. They want to get through the gate, so that's what they want to do. And then the other thing that I don't know that everybody knows, but it's probably worth you knowing, is that the state of California, in January, passed a law basically that we can't show property without a contract, the buyer's brokers agreement. So a lot, that slows people down. So you have to sign a contract if you want to see property, and that includes the length of time you're in contact with that person and their rate. So,
Does that include your lifestyle tours?
no, as long as we don't open a property, we're okay. And we have people who won't go in property now but we'll still drive through. But that's kind of a big deal for some people. They don't want to make that heavy duty commitment.
Sure. Right.
Yeah, and it's required by everybody now, all agents.
Kevin?
Thanks everybody for great input. Ted, in terms of the mutuals, I'm on the first mutual board and we're drowning with trying to get volunteers. I don't know if we want to add another ambassador. Like an ambassador. And to me, the clubs are really critical. I mean, before I bought, Maxine did the same thing. You went and talked to the Jewish community. I went and talked to the gay and lesbian community and went to a Democratic club meeting. And I just went to the website and sent emails and got gate access to come to a meeting. So if you're proactive, you can do it. But I love the pilot idea. Like maybe Maxine and I and another person could say, you get a tour request, give it to us and we'll try it. Because to me, I think the clubs and making it personal to what their interests are, and that would be the first thing I would do as a tour guide, send out a form. What are your interests? What are you interested in? You're interested in golf? Let's go play golf. You're interested in pickleball? Let's go play pickleball.
I want to wrap up this discussion.
I just wanted to make a suggestion. If you're talking about taking this more from the club perspective, I think maybe the next step would be to talk with the activities council.
Okay.
Because they're connected with all of the clubs
Okay.
and get a feeling, a sense from them about maybe a way to actually make that partnership work with the different clubs. If anyone would know, they would.
And in conjunction with that, because what I was gonna say, the next step is talking to the real estate. I think Linda, you're an awesome contact person, but to get in front of the group and say, this is something that's being considered, how does that impact you? And we need to be careful. We're not real estate agents, and we don't want to pretend that we are. And we also don't want to tank a deal that a real estate person might be working on.
So we have a meeting every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. in Hillside Clubhouse. And it's an hour. And then we have touring afterwards. So I don't know if that could be a resource to you, but we could definitely get on the agenda, even if different people want to come for, just a few minutes to talk to the group, get their feedback, maybe tour with some people, because we tour from 10 to 11. So it might be worthwhile for us to make some contacts like that. I think maybe the more I listen, it might be a good collaboration. It might be even better to have some people intermix and see how.
So next steps, activities council and attend the real estate.
Just real quick, when I was president of the garden club, the realtors asked me to come in and do a presentation in front of them. And there was a lot of really great information back and forth that they didn't know how the garden club works. But they know that it's 5 acres of land and it's this big piece of, it's an amenity that really, people really look forward to coming in here to do, because we don't have yards. And so they like that. I think that, and also the other piece is that I've had two realtors come up to me and ask, I hear you're on the marketing committee. When are you going to get in front of us? So I think that's something that we need to think about somehow after this finishes, being part of the thing of somebody getting in front of the realtors and discussing the overall.
It's in the working out
Yeah.
line. Ann has already anticipated that. Yeah, good. All right, so there's no recommendation, Ken?
I want to add one thing. are we looking at with, in the, website update is to embed the, current listings in the website? It's hard to find out, yeah, cause I just had to do a.
Yeah, there is a way that we can embed the MLS listings. There's a cost to it, but I kind of anticipated as part of last year's budget process that we're gonna go in that direction, so it's already in the budget.
Great, very good. Thanks, everybody. It's pretty.
Okay, awesome. And brand guide.
Here we go. Not a lot of changes. There was a quick turnaround from the last meeting, so I couldn't incorporate everything that we discussed, but there were a few things. Okay. We have, so obviously, I said that they're still being refined, but now they're refined, so we would be able to replace with the new values. Throughout, we talked about it needed to say Rossmore Walnut Creek, so that has been changed throughout. We didn't make changes here. I do still need to elaborate more on those secondary colors. We haven't had a chance to sit down to do that part yet. But we did supplement some typography, so Verdana is probably the closest that we had to Diva Ideal. So we went with that. That is part of the Microsoft package that everybody gets. So we're looking at that as a possible replacement. It's not as pretty, but it's actually functional, and
I think it reads better.
but there's a couple people who agree with you on that one. And then I made just a couple small changes with the mood board to kind of show you that we can get a little bit more. We talked about a little bit more diversity in the photos. You probably don't even know which 3 I subbed out, but it just, and I put our tree in. I think Roy was the one who said, that's not our tree. So there's our tree. Or what was our tree?
Yeah.
But it's the golden ring tree, so, but this is just a couple examples of how we can still tweak within the brand guide. What we had not discussed and probably still will need to, whether that happens today or it happens next time, the taglines and the phrases. If this is what we want to stick with, or this is what we feel we should make some adjustments to, that part we really did not discuss last time, so it's kind of where I thought we would land with this one.
And I do not like editing by committee. And so I think this is ideal for a working group to take the values as we've now adopted them and say, okay, how does this impact taglines and things like that? So do we have any volunteers who would like to be Amy?
I'll be.
No, I do have somewhat limited time between now and when my book comes out, that I can participate as.
Okay, okay.
And is this the work verbiage that you created?
No, so this
Where
was,
does this come from?
so Andriana, I and Panjali came up with the brand.
this is
So
part-
they came up
okay.
with this was sort of our working
Right,
starting
okay.
point.
I want.
And now we go from here.
So contrarian and say, do we really need this?
So the only reason I would say that we do is as we're putting together the marketing website, you are going to have taglines and phrases that are built into that. It is perfectly fine if the group decides we are going to allow whoever our marketing website designer is to help us with that. But if the group wants to have input in this, now would be the time to do it. We would make it as part of the brand guide, and then it becomes part of when we do the RFP, it becomes part of the RFP for whoever we select as a marketing website designer.
So doesn't, okay, so I'm thinking with your point about the website, that as you move to a page, so you're saying like, well, I'm gonna do security, or don't we have to have the structure of the website before we know what the header's gonna be?
Yes. But you do want, so for example, I've talked quite a bit with Laguna Woods because they just went through a whole rebrand with their website. And one of the things they talked about was having taglines when they went into that meeting so that there was an understanding for the website. The person who did the design, there was an understanding of what it was they were trying to emphasize. And again, your taglines can be really short and punchy, or they can be a little bit longer. So in Laguna Woods case, they went with their sort of deal was no more than 4 words. And so they had sample taglines that were, and then the website was built with those sample taglines in mind.
So,
There were changes made,
yes,
but they did go in with, and again, we could just go in with this. It's just the question was, does the marketing task force feel like this is representative of what we want to put forth with the marketing website designer?
I would tag on with Kathleen because now that we've adopted the values, these don't seem as appropriate to me. And we're getting into the details of the website building, whereas like we talked about having a residual task force on the marketing website to help with those sorts of decisions. So
You can take this a different direction, right? You could completely remove this as part of the brand guide that goes to the GRF board. And what you do then is when the marketing website is finished, you now know what your taglines are. You take the taglines from there and you go ahead and you include them as part of the brand guide. You can go that direction too. It's really up to whatever you guys want to do.
I think it's something that's more practical and real life now that we have all of these things that are on the verge of coming together. It seems like we can get out of the mode of just making stuff up and move into a more practical thing, even if you provided, to me and myself, anybody else who wants to work on this, even if you could say, we think that this might be the structure, so we're gonna have, 10 jumping off places or something as a secondary categories, or are thinking that we want to match what you have, plus we have these other two. Then you can kind of say, look, well, let's get real.
There's another possibility here too, right? So at the last meeting, we talked about recommending to the board, along with doing the new marketing website, having a working group to work with whoever is our marketing website designer. Perhaps that working group, this is part of what they're doing.
I would agree with that.
I would too.
Yeah, I think that timing is better. So we will remove this from the brand guide at this point in time, unless there's somebody on the task force that disagrees with that move. Seeing no dissent. Okay.
That was easy.
Is there anything else in the brand guide?
No, those are the only changes right now.
Okay,
The rest were just sort of examples of how you could get your target audience, and that actually wouldn't stay in the guide.
by the way, I don't think I saw vendors added in target audience. Was that on purpose?
No, it was just, that was what they came up with and no one brought up that they wanted. We could easily add those back in if the group of like vendors added into that list.
I thought we talked about it last time, is an important part of target audience, staff and vendors.
Staff were there, vendors
Yes.
weren't, but we can absolutely add that in.
Anybody disagree with adding that?
I thought we were gonna combine them, staff and
I
vendors.
did too.
That's what I remember.
I don't think it should be.
My apologies, I put it in my notes, but we'll put it back in.
Well-
Staff is like the second most, after residents, staff is like the most important. They have special needs. They have, they're working here, right? They spend all of their working time. There's a whole, different set of potential working for communications and values and stuff that I think that the staff will want to take on, and then the vendors are much more loosely connected.
You
I
think
just
they
want
should
to keep them separate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Anybody disagree with that?
No, I just think they should both be in there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay.
All right, all right. Thank you, man.
You're welcome.
All righty, so now, myrossmore.com. Never end.
Getting into the weeds a little.
Now we're in the weeds.
So as a reminder, we've actually been working on myrossmore.com for 18 months, and the biggest challenge that we have with this is that we're trying to take it from two different perspectives and smash it all together. So you have the amenities end, which is truly the GRF, and then you have the HOA end, which is your mutuals. And what we have discovered after an extensive amount of research is that nobody does both sides. They are completely separate. What we then did was thought outside the box, and we started looking at country clubs and resorts, trying to find something that might have more of the amenity end, because that's really what we need with My Rossmore, is to be able to help people with those self-service features. Golf tee times, if you want to make a reservation to the restaurant, if you want to buy a ticket to the concert. So we took it from the self-service end, looked at resort management companies, and we found one that has sort of a unique model. So what they've done is they've built what are called modules. So there's a golf module. It just deals with golf. There's one for restaurants, there's one for events, etc. And what you do is you come in and you say, these are the modules I want, and they build that sort of self-service piece that you need. So we have had to evaluate the modules individually. We've already done golf, we've done dining, we've done the communications piece. We are now in the middle of doing the reservations piece. What we do in this is we give them what's called a demo script. So we say, this is what we want you to demonstrate for us based on what our needs are. So we give them all of our needs, give them the demo script, and then they build a demo for us that would show us how their software works for us. There are 4 different companies right now that we're looking at for our recreation piece and for the fitness center because of the classes and personal trainer. There's one of them that would work with my Rossmore. The reason is because, again, we need those multiple pieces, right? So we need golf included in that. We need communications included in that. We like the idea of being able to include the work order desk that Agilisys could do. So we're just waiting to find out, will it actually serve the needs for recreation? And if not, then Agilisys is out. The reason they're out is this only really works from a single sign-on perspective, which means you log in once and you get every single piece, if everything lives under the same house. So if it can't do the recreation piece, the price tag for Agilisys is not worth it for us. I would not be able to sell it to the board. So we will know probably in the next, because we expect to do the demo with them in about a week with Agilisys. We'll know if they're in the mix or they're not. So hopefully before the next meeting, we'll know. If they don't make it, then let's walk through the different things here. Okay, so let's start with what do we need in my Rossmore? So my Rossmore, regardless of which of these 3 phases we go through, will have these things. We are going to have it connect to member records so that you can register and only residents get into the portal. So right off the bat, it has to connect with NetSuite. Our current My Rossmore already does. So that infrastructure will stay. There will be a login landing page. So you come to the page when you go to myrossmore.com, you're going to see username, password. That's how you get in. There is a little button at the bottom that says register. It's the first time you come, you click register and you start to type in your name and address. And there you are, because again, it's connected to the member records. We are going to redesign the homepage. The homepage that you see now has a bunch of boxes and it's all very gray. We all agree that that's not a very friendly design. So we would definitely redesign what that homepage experience looks like. The resident pages that currently live on rossmore.com, as we've already discussed, those will move over to My Rossmore. There will be a little bit of an element that stays, but that would be from the prospective buyer standpoint. So things like we have tennis courts, we have the golf course, but more from a marketing standpoint. Over here for My Rossmore, it will be, here's everything you need to know about golfing in Rossmore. And then we would have a separate sign-on to Dwelling Live. Dwelling Live does not connect. It doesn't have what's called an open API that will allow you to connect it for this, like I said, single sign-on experience. Dwelling Live already exists. Nobody wants to walk away from that. But what we would provide is a link that residents would be able to click and get into Dwelling Live so they would be able to do their own guest gate passes. And then there would be.
Excuse me, Ann, would
Yes.
that tie into the member records?
Yes, it's already tied into member records.
Okay.
So all of the member records are already in Dwelling Live, the same deal. We would have to help everybody to get a login for that, but once that's established and once you log in, you're already in the system. As long as you live in Rossmore, you're there and you can do gate passes and it would be connected to your account. And then the last piece would be what I'm calling community spaces, social feeds. We talked about it a little bit last time about having something like Fluent Community that would allow you to have an internal place where residents would be able to post and comment and engage with one another. So that would also live in My Rossmore. Again, it's like next door, but it's only here. It isn't outside the gate, so you can control the messaging a little bit better if it's only residents.
And that would be available to mutuals as well as clubs.
That's correct.
And have payment options.
And departments and yes, all of that. It's like, as you're seeing with NetSuite, right, any implementation would have rollouts. So we would roll out and we would have the community spaces there. But for example, if we decided we were gonna open that up to clubs and we needed to help them set that up, that would have to be a phased approach that would come phase 2. So not everything is gonna happen in 6 to 8 months, but at least you have the launch and we can say, here's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 with a timeline for that.
I have a question.
Yes.
On our current website for residents,
Mm-hmm,
drop down,
mm-hmm.
is everything going, that drops down, which is like 20 blanks, be on the future My Rossmore?
It will, in that design, it will not. We are looking at a completely different design because we've all talked in this group about the multiple menu tiers is just too
Not the
complicated.
design, I
So-
mean the topics.
The topics, yes.
Yeah, that's all I meant.
Yes.
All the topics,
Yes.
which we now go to for residents,
Mhm.
everything there will be, okay, that's
That's
my
right.
question.
The other thing that will move over is the contact us page that currently lives on rossmore.com. There's more than you would need there from a marketing standpoint, but everybody resident wise needs to know who to call. So that would also live on my Rossmore.
Another question. So
Yes.
it seems like room reservation seems to be a stumbling point for Agilicis and is there any reason why it can't operate like dwelling live? I mean, not every resident needs to get into room reservations. That's a special need.
Yeah, so what we discovered, probably almost at the beginning of looking at all of these different software pieces is that we are very unique in how we're set up. First, the number of facilities that we have is very high. The biggest problem that you have is with the historical bookings. So there's clubs that may have a recurring booking where they're meeting every single Tuesday, first Tuesday of every single month in a particular room. In most reservation software systems, you go in and you say, I need it first Tuesday every month in this room. And the system will come back and either say, yes, those 12 dates are available or no. You can have 11 dates available, but because it's written in a way where it's like all or none, it tells you no. So instead of our reservation crew being able to go in and say, okay, we need to now find a different room for this one date, it completely nullifies that entire booking and they have to start all over again. So we had to go and identify, are there actual software programs out there that will allow you to have that? There's a word for it, forgive me, I don't remember what the word is, but that it essentially allows you to look at that discrepancy and fix that as a one-off instead of just throwing the whole booking out.
Flexibility.
Flexibility, yes. So that was one end of it, right? So, and then the second end became, this is a big one, it has to connect with NetSuite. We have to be able to have our clubs and our members all as part of whatever. For example, if you're going to sign up for a class, we have to know, yes, you're a resident.
Mhm.
If there's a fee attached to that class, you have to be able to pay and have it go back into NetSuite. What we do not want to do, what we have done in the past is we have these manual programs and you're like, it's fine, we'll just take it and then we'll write out a little form and we'll send it up to accounting. We're trying to avoid that. We've got to stop that. That's where staff inefficiency comes into play. So that's what we're looking at right now is, will Agilicis allow us to do that? I will say up front, we do know because of the preliminary demo work that it would work for like the personal trainer times for the fitness center. So we know one piece. Now we're just trying to figure out the other piece. This is also a big one for me. It's the #1 request that we've gotten from residents. They want an events calendar back, a comprehensive events calendar. So that is very high on the list. And we actually knocked out a really good software program because it could not give us a calendar.
Mhm.
But again, you know, you realize you're not going to get everything. We're well aware. When you go through these demo scripts, there's 4 different companies. You say at the end, who actually gives us the most?
Hmm.
Understanding you can't get everything. One thing that I like about Agilicis and the total likes about Agilicis is they do have a web development crew. So if you have a specific ask, they can tweak things with their group to hopefully meet that need. I'm hopeful that Agilicis survives. We'll see what happens. Again, we should know very soon. And then so within this part of it, staff is going to handle page design and implementation of that community spaces. We may need assistance in some of the other areas. So Agilicis, this is the one I've been talking about, our self-service portal. What it would allow us to do again is house everything in a single sign-on resort management system. So again, it will include golf, recreation, the fitness center, and dining. We would essentially consider this path if, again, recreation and fitness selects this as the one to go down because of the cost that's involved. The development time would be 6 to 8 months from when we sign a contract. And again, that selection for recreations piece will happen in May, so that's when we would know, okay, we're moving forward. We would, because of the price tag involved in this, we will need to go to planning, finance, and then the board to be sure everybody has had a chance to fully vet what we're talking about using. Staff will direct the Agilicis team on the setup, and we would work with the third-party developers to set up the new homepage and the resident pages. What we're talking about doing is Javier and I can do a lot, but there's some limitations, so we would want some assistance on that end to do this right. You are looking at a one-time capital cost for setup. I don't want to talk about prices because I fully intend to negotiate with Agilicis, so I don't want to kill myself at this table. And there's also a monthly subscription and maintenance fee. They also charge a pay transaction fee, but we pay that now with our software, so that would not be an additional cost. And again, as I've emphasized a couple times, this is really only worth it if we can get the whole deal. Path number 2. So if Agilicis doesn't work, this is path number 2. It's a hybrid model. So we would retain our current My Rossmore dashboard of resident services, which right now includes golf, event tickets, excursions, classes, and we would turn on Dwelling Live for the gate passes. So our web developer actually has already built into My Rossmore, we just haven't turned it on, the ability to do gate passes. The reason we haven't turned it on is all residents in Rossmore would have to be trained. And if we're gonna walk away from the current My Rossmore model, I don't wanna have to train them twice. We wanna train once. There would be no additional single sign-on services after this. That's because it's very costly. Every one of these that we have built costs about $20,000 to build. So you reach a point that, and then there's an additional maintenance fee to maintain that piece on top of it. Anyone who plays golf a couple of months ago might have been caught in the debacle where Fora just decided it changed some coding in the back. We couldn't figure out what the change was. It took a week and a half to find a person who knew what the change was to get it fixed. That's the problem with a customized portal, unfortunately. That part would stay. However, we have now identified with every single software we have who the actual person is we need to talk to. So this ever happens again, we skip everybody else and go straight to the person we need. So hopefully that would solve some of this. If we were to keep this, we would be looking at an 8-month turnaround to get Dwelling Live on, to move the resident pages over from rossmore.com, and to redesign the homepage. To be determined would be the recreation piece, because eventually we would have to replace the event tickets, excursions, and the classes. And that piece would have to be rebuilt. That's an extremely important piece to the self-service, so we would rebuild that no matter what the software was. This one is staff intensive. We would work with a third-party developer again to connect the software and move the resident pages, but there's a lot of work in getting everything moved over and getting this all built out again. The development costs, again, it's going to depend on the scope and the complexity of the work, as well as the maintenance fee. But we're looking at probably $10,000 to $15,000 if any of the software that we currently are using, like if we decided to walk away from for golf, it would be $10,000 to $15,000 to replace that with new software. 4UP is working. It's a great software program. We have no problems with 4UP. It's just you never know what's going to happen down the line, and we will be there if we don't.
And
Mhm.
in this model, are you connected to NetSuite?
Yes, all of these models are connected to NetSuite.
So I really, really hope that the Agilicis works. Because I can imagine
Here, here.
what
You and me both.
your life would be like with this one. But so what I'm thinking of is it's sort of like a customized hub
Mhm.
that then connects into each of these independent.
Yes.
services.
And
is
that's
that-
the way that it works now. So we use NetSuite. We have a program that's called Soligo. Think of it as a bridge, right? So Soligo is the bridge that connects NetSuite to my Rossmore. Then in my Rossmore, Soligo has new bridges that goes to 4Up for golf, Thunder tickets for the event tickets, etc. So you have all these
It's a
different bridges.
similar concept in one regard, that there's modules.
Yes.
But now all the modules are coming from different people.
Correct.
From different.
Yes. And so you have that added layer, right, of having to deal with different vendors. Not everybody has the same, if you would call it, backdoor to get in, so that's when you need a lot more development work.
Your
Yes.
experience
Mhm.
is different. and-
I've talked a lot about the fact that this is a customized dashboard, and what I now understand, because I've had 5 different communities ask to talk to our developer. No one has this and everybody wants it. So, probably shouldn't be saying this in an open meeting, but I'll say it anyway. Part of the thought is if other communities decide to do this too, if we all join in together, can you make a customized model that works for multiple people and now you share the cost among the multiple people?
That would also.
Then
give you-
custom is not as expensive.
It would give you some negotiating power with Agilicis to say.
There's
something.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
That's even better, yes.
So that's path number 2. Path number 3 would be a completely new design. So we would look at service features that are not embedded into the portal itself. Instead of using sort of the single sign-on experience, you would just have links. So you would have a link to Fora, which then means all of the residents would need a username and a password to Fora. Whatever we did for the reservation fee, same thing, username and password for that. So inside my Rossmore, you click on it and it will actually take you out of the portal and into this other software, into this other place.
So all it does is direct you to third party.
That's correct. It would just direct you. Now, it's less expensive to maintain. If it breaks, it's no big deal because you're just replacing a link instead of having to replace all this back end coding to make it work inside of my Rossmore. So from that perspective, it is cheaper for maintenance. It's cheaper to keep it going long term. However, you still have to pay because we need NetSuite to be ported into each one of these third-party vendors. And that's expensive. That is, in fact, that's probably, it may even make it more expensive than a customized model. That's something we're trying to look at right now. So.
And the residents,
So that's
the residents would have to sign on twice.
Yes.
First for the portal and then for the secondary.
Yes. So it's definitely not as convenient for the residents. So that's one of the other reasons.
Anybody like this idea?
No.
I say strike it.
Yeah.
I don't think that-
Okay, then I'll stop talking.
It would be burdensome.
It is.
For everyone.
And it'd be a lot of service for people who can't do the double click.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to have a call center.
Right, right.
Software license in
Yeah, okay.
every single one of those?
We do. Yes.
Well, you would for the hybrid as well.
Yes, we already
It's not
have.
that You're automating the connections as
Yes.
opposed to making.
It's really, what the new design one here is, again, it is less expensive from a maintenance standpoint. It's, you have fewer issues with it going down, right? Because again, if it goes down, it's because it went down in Fora, not because it went down for us.
It's just a portal then. That's all it is.
So that's kind of your different end of this. When we've talked repeatedly about, do we want to continue to bear the expense, the maintenance cost and the hassle that comes with what we have with our current portal? And of course, nobody likes the look of it. So you say to yourself, okay, well, what are the other options? So Agilicis or this are really the only other 2 options that exist for us. I will, the one thing again, I'll say is now having looked at all these other portals, I gotta tell you, I am so impressed with what we have. I realize it's ugly, but it is so incredibly functional. It does things, like I said, everybody who right now uses Fora is talking with our web developer about how did you do the tea time piece of it? Because they recognize too, right now their folks have to go into their portal and then click this way to get into Fora and sign in again.
Yes,
And
that's
they
true.
want to skip that step. So from my standpoint is if we do the hybrid model, it's can we make it a little more functional? Can we make it look better? Can we make it work a little bit better? I don't know. And I won't know because I'm waiting to see if the Agilysys piece comes in. I don't want to put all my eggs in the hybrid basket until I know if Agilysys is off the table. So I realize I'm not committing, but this is why.
So hopefully by next meeting, we'll have
Hopefully,
between the two options, Agilysys and hybrid.
yes,
And whatever we do, it won't look like Pac-Man anymore, right?
that's the hope. I'm making absolutely no promises,
It's
but
been
that
a
is
long time.
But do we all agree that this option is off the table?
So new design is off the table.
Off the table.
Okay.
Anybody disagree? Okay,
Okay, I just want to.
Excellent.
thank you for doing that, Andy. All right, working draft is next on the agenda.
Okay. Can you hold on 1 second?
You've been busy.
I have, I just gotta find where everything is. Too big, okay. So we started to talk about this last time as a sort of the working outline that we could use for the final marketing report, which we will put together and finalize in the next meeting. So we had talked about the different recommendations that we had, starting with turning rossmore.com into a marketing website. And then additionally recommending that we convene a working group from within the task force to basically work with the web designer on what that would end up looking like. So we had talked about how staff would then need to develop an RFP to bring in that website developer. It would include, that RFP will include the direction that we've already discussed in the last 2 meetings about kind of the things we would like to see in the website and the content that we would like to have on it. But maybe as we go through this, does anyone have any thoughts on that one first? Anything that's sort of missing from that piece? That was easy. Okay. Next up, we've got the residents' content moving over to the resident portal, which again will be focused on the residents only as the target audience. In April, that's today, we're reporting on the timeline and the staffing needs for those 2 websites. We've now made a decision that it will be one of those 2. So first up, we need to decide is Agilysys it. If not, we move to the hybrid model, and then we'll be able to do a firm timeline for how the resident portal will need to go. We're using the list that Kathleen and Ted came up with about what should be on that portal. Anything missing from this or any other suggestions for the portal piece?
Just one question, one in B on the bottom there, it says, determine if a website developer is necessary. That means an extra staff member, right?
No, that means a third-party vendor. Like we're going and doing an RFP for a marketing website developer, we would also do one for the portal piece. We currently have a web developer. What I don't know is in redoing that homepage, are we going to need a second? Because our current developer created the one we have, we may need to bring in one more person to help us really rework that design. So if we did, it would be somebody outside of staff.
Do we have to, so if we did need to bring in another person, we have to wait till the budgeting cycle to make that decision in September, or is that something?
So when we talked, well, when we talked about the marketing website itself, we went to the finance committee and the board and essentially asked as part of capital, set aside 100,000 from the NetSuite bucket. Within that 100,000 is where I would pull for the portal as well. I'm assuming around 75,000 to 80,000 is what I'm going to need for the marketing. And 20 to 25 is what I would need for the portal. We don't need, again, the structure is there. We're only talking about replacing a homepage and the dashboard, so it's not as much work.
And just a fine tuning thing
Mhm.
here. I think we should stop saying portal. And because we say resident portal, then we say myrossmore.com. It's just confusing. The
Mhm.
brand name is myrossmore. I
We
think
can
we
do
just
that.
need to be consistent. I think I think it's important for us also to say in this regard, we need to make this very user-friendly in myrossmore.com. And that's a goal of this
Mhm.
as well. So if you could work that
Yes,
verbiage in, I think that would
we
be
can do
important.
that.
Yeah,
I was gonna mention with the guest passes, a lot of our residents do not have computers. A resident moved in next door, she not only doesn't have a computer, she doesn't have a smartphone. So, you always gotta be thinking about that, it's like, not everybody is tech
Yeah,
savvy.
so just so everyone understands, we're not talking about changing any of the way that the procedures work in Rossmore. You will always have the ability to go to front desks and do things in person, to call on the phone and get service that way. What we're talking about is recognizing that there's an audience that's here now and coming in the gate who want more, the ability and convenience that comes with online. That's the piece that's missing. So that's the piece we need to continue to build out. So my Rossmore is really for your internet-based folks. The phone and in person, that lives on. Won't go away.
and maybe we need to say that as a part of this
Yeah.
recommendation, that we continue the,
Old school way.
yeah, well. use different terminology. That's an important point, Kevin. Yeah.
Should the computer club or somebody be trying to help folks get with the modern
So
times?
kind of getting a little bit ahead of the game. That's the second piece that comes with my Rossmore, right? Once we roll this out, we've already had some preliminary conversations with the computer club about setting up. We do like a road show and we would have some residents on hand with computers to help make sure people got registered, give them a quick, here's how it works. Javier will work on tutorial videos that says, if you want to do this, click here, if you want to do this, so that people have those videos. That's all part of the communications plan. I don't necessarily believe it has to be a part of this. We can say we're going to develop a communications plan, but I ask that we not specifically put what pieces are part of that, because as from a staff standpoint, I'd like the flexibility to not close the door on anything. I am a big believer that teach them every way that's available. So the computer club is definitely on the list.
Anything else on this item? Next.
Okay. Third, we have adopt the brand guide and develop a FAQ with consistent messaging to be distributed to the local real estate agents and incorporated into the websites. So we would roll out the brand guide to staff and the real estate agents and the vendors. And my staff, the communications staff, will build that FAQ. A lot of things have already sort of come up as part of the marketing task force where people are confused, et cetera. So I've been keeping a very big laundry list of all the things. What I'd like to do with the FAQ is instead of just question, answer, I'd like to divide it into sections. So if you have questions about amenities, if you have questions about how the, our operational structure, if you have questions about what's GRF versus mutual. So you break that down so that it's easier for whoever's asking that question to find the information.
Can I, this is technical, but brand guide, I think is a little, I would like to see it say brand messaging.
So the reason that it's called brand guide.
No, I
is
understand
that, yeah, that's what it is and it's not really, it's not actually messaging. Messaging is the next piece that's gonna come with this, right? So once we now know what our mission statement is, our vision statement, our values, that gets built into the messaging. The brand guide is really a guide. It's to say, not just what is the message, but here's our colors, here's our logo.
Okay.
These are all the things we want you. This is our guidance for how you're supposed to use.
The messaging.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, yeah, that's part of it, but it really is a guide. And so again, right now, nobody has access to the logos. If you want the logo, you have to come and get it from me. And part of that is because we don't want those logos manipulated. If you have a guide, we can take this to the clubs and say, these are the only logos you can use and you can't manipulate them. That's just as an example.
Any other comments on this one?
I don't know whether you need to put this here to your point about not wanting too much in here.
Yes.
I think that there will be some usage examples and things that would be needed for a more useful
Agreed.
guide.
Mhm.
I don't see any reason to do it right now, kind of back to the pilots. I'm a big proponent of give it to a small group, help them break it, fix it, and then
Yeah.
give it to a larger group. So
Agreed.
Okay.
Okay. Task staff to develop a social media plan that in line with marketing website and the and myrossmore.com. Utilizes public social platforms on for external marketing and a community-based platform for internal marketing. So we envision that staff would really implement this after we have those websites up and running. Our staff is small, we really can only compartmentalize so many things at once. We need to really focus on those two websites first. And then we would be looking at adopting that low impact approach that Aya and Fred Holly came up for us. With that, though, I do have to say, even with a low impact approach, that's going to be a lot of work. That is in addition to sort of what we're doing now. So I would have to figure out either internally or looking at, do we need additional staff resources to make this kind of thing happen? That's something that I really would still need to sit down and figure out how that's going to work. So I can't promise that I have all the answers to that one right now. Any questions, additions, ideas for that one? All right. So number 5, rebrand everything with GRF and MOD names using Rossmore Walnut Creek, which is what we decided at the last meeting. So we've got our draft bullet points, and staff would then create templates for name branding, appoint a staff person to oversee the distribution of the templates and execution of the branding. Or one of the next pieces we're going to talk about, I'd like to approach a possible different idea for how to go about implementing the actual rebranding. But we'll get to that in the next presentation.
So one of the things that we talked about today is a potential ambassador program. We haven't recommended that yet, but that could be an additional bullet point. By the way, Kevin, you just mentioned it briefly. The buddy program is also a great idea, and so maybe that's something else to consider as in your next report. We may not be ready to make a recommendation, but we might just want to add a potential slide.
Okay.
For
We can do that, like a number 6.
yes.
Okay.
My understanding was the GRF name is in trust documents and can't be changed.
Yeah, so the way it works is we have registered Rossmore Walnut Creek as what's called a fictitious business name. So in documentation, it would say Golden Rain Foundation, parentheses, doing business as Rossmore Walnut Creek. Then you're able to use Rossmore Walnut Creek, but from that legal standpoint, it does still say Golden Rain Foundation. What we're talking about, if you remember the last meeting, I brought up the spreadsheet of all the different places where it says GRF or MOD. It could be everything from uniforms and signs to stationery and business cards. As an example, my business card has the Rossmore Walnut Creek logo on it. And then it says Ann Peterson, Director of Communications, Golden Rain Foundation. So if we're adopting this, Golden Rain Foundation comes off. Rossmore Walnut Creek is already there. It's just Ann Peterson, Director of Communications. So it's that's what we're talking about with rebranding, is pulling that name out where we don't need to use it, where you can replace it instead with Rossmore Walnut Creek.
But the board itself will still be called.
That's again up to the group in terms of the recommendation that you want to make.
Does that also include MOD?
So what the group is, do you want to take this? Or do you want me to keep going?
Well, it's,
I think
we already
we
approved it last time. right?
Yeah.
And we made a recommendation to the board to drop GRF, drop Golden Rain Foundation. It's now Rossmore Walnut Creek across the board.
Yeah.
MLD, no.
What we
it's
have
Rossmore Walnut Creek.
What we had not talked about was the RWC idea. The idea, because Rossmore Walnut Creek Property Management, which would be the new MOD, is such a mouthful. Instead, is it RWC, Property Management? Again, you're talking about nicknames, right? Rossmore is the nickname, RWC would be the nickname.
But as we
that-
said last night, everybody will come up with their own nicknames anyway. But it's not the GRF board anymore, it's the RWC board. You know, MOD trucks right now say Rossmore Walnut Creek, all you have to do is add property management, that's the term they use. So-
So just if I could comment on that, from having done numerous name changes and stuff in my career. You might well just accept the model, not go away.
I know.
It will not go, it's too short. No, I don't think it will, and the reason why it won't is because everything, that's the reason why our WC works better than Rossmore Walnut Creek is that everything gets dumbed down the more that you, for things that you communicate. I watched product names do this, company names do this. To your point, people will make up their own stuff. So if you're gonna drop mod, come up with something else that is equally short and catchy.
RPM, RPM, easy.
Okay, but mod is one syllable. I'm telling you, they are remarkably sticky.
Yeah.
And then you have people, the residents be like, well, what they're really talking about is the mod. Oh, well, it's. And that's the way it will work. So changing it officially and changing the way that they all identify themselves and stuff, but I wouldn't let if you really don't want mod to continue, you need to come up with something equally short and sweet and catchy and expect to have a long tail. Because
There's no question.
Except
And the
that
reason,
what Kathleen is saying brings up a good point, and maybe that's a point to address here. Do we even go down that road? Is it necessary to change mod, to change that? If that is what everyone's gonna do anyway.
why can't it be the RWC mod? And so like, or Rossmore Walnut Creek, whatever the MOD stands for, I don't even know. It stands for.
here's the reason I keep stressing property management, is that people don't understand what MOD.
Yeah, they do.
And even when you say mutual operations division, they go, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
When you say property oh, it's a property management company. That's who manages my property. It's
I
self-defining.
can't, you're absolutely 100% right. I was talking about communication aspect.
And I agree, it's gotta be catchy. I like.
Right,
it.
so if it's like
Could it just be property?
broadband or something like that.
Well, I guess
Cause MOD doesn't have anything to do with GRF or Golden.
it's true.
Or, Russell Walnut Creek, property management would be simple and easy.
I'm telling you, it can be like one or two syllables. Or if you didn't have mod already embedded in everybody's brain, you would not probably have that problem because you could the people would still come up with a new nickname. But the fact that mod is so freaking easy to remember and everybody who's here knows what it is.
Right.
But although
Kind of.
people.
Kind of.
I don't know what it
Kind
is.
of.
I don't know what the end is.
I have sat in mutual board meetings and I don't understand. what it is.
Okay.
I mean, seriously, it is a big issue.
Well, so anybody who's lived in another gated community like I have, property management is used all over. So it's very understood what that means.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, Dwight. What we have to come up with a moniker for it, but property management, everybody knows what that
I'm
means.
100% agree with that. I'm just talking about how to get rid of mod. I'm just setting expectations.
What if you combine the two, not to muddy the waters, but what if you keep mod and it's mod
No,
property management?
No.
Yes.
Talk about consistent branding. Man, I can't believe that came out of your mouth. Kevin.
So I think just along the same lines that we're doing of Rossmore.com is gonna be our marketing tool. And my Rossmore is gonna be for the members. They're gonna pick up on that really quick. They'll also pick up on the new names that we're gonna be putting out along with the other stuff. If you keep using that, if I keep using mod when I'm referring to Rossmore Walnut Creek Management Company, then no, they're gonna still remember mod. But the more people who start talking about the new way, the more it's gonna come out. I just heard Ann, where it's written certain ways, she corrected herself and went right way to find Rossmore for him. And I thought, that's the whole thing. I read the residence portal, and then she started, and then she says, and I go, yeah, that's it. I have to do that too. So I think that as long as we keep sending the same message out, it's not gonna take that long for people to convert.
And I just think now is the time. We're doing.
Yeah, I'm
it.
not disagreeing with what anybody is saying. I think you're absolutely right. I think stick with what it is. I'm just saying, expect a long tail and a lot of confusion.
And there were some people that will leave Rossmore before they will give up one.
And that's okay. I think that's okay.
Yeah,
It's a process.
that's fine, just expectation for everybody.
It took me a
And I
long
think
time
we're
to get
gonna-
Ron.
Let's wind up this
Yeah, I can
conversation.
give one example though, of if you beat it into the ground and into the heads long enough, they'll get it. Channel 28 is what Rossmore TV was for years, because it was actually on Channel 28.
Mhm.
We knew we were headed towards HD and we were gonna lose Channel 28. So 4 years ago, we rebranded everything as Rossmore TV. We didn't make a big to-do about it, we just did it. We changed the signs, we changed everything on the TV, we changed it in the newspaper. Slowly getting people used to this. And then when we knew it's time, we're moving to channel 1083, then we just hammered it home. Are there still people who call it channel 28?
Yes.
Yes.
But I would say 75% now understand it's Rossmore TV. And as the 25% who call it channel 28 are no longer in Rossmore, the ones coming in all know it as Rossmore TV. It does change. It will take a while. It will, and it's gonna be the same approach. We are gonna just have to keep hammering it home. But it is why it's really important. That's why at the last meeting I talked about, let's keep it as Rossmore Walnut Creek, because it is easier if you're doing Rossmore Walnut Creek or RWC, not to have a million different names.
Yeah.
Because then you have all these people going, I don't even know what it is. There's too many.
Mhm.
If you can keep with the one, it's just, it will make the messaging that much easier
Eventually.
eventually.
Kevin, and then we need to move on.
How do we kill the term coupon?
Enjoy this.
I know.
That's above my pay grade.
That's a mutual issue.
Yeah, that's a totally different issue.
And by the way, we need to make it clear, we are not addressing any mutual names,
Yes.
because that's only the purview of the mutual boards.
Right. A mutual is not about marketing. We're here about marketing.
Okay, we need to move on. New business. So, Anne?
Sure. So we have talked about how we want to now do the RFP to get an actual marketing website, to turn rockmore.com into an actual marketing website. What we now need is for the task force to actually recommend to the board that we do that we authorize the general manager to execute an RFP for that marketing website.
Do we have a motion in that regard? Ted? Thank you.
I'll make the motion that we recommend the GRF board authorizing the general manager to execute an RFP for the marketing website.
Amy, second. Would you be amenable to changing that to the RWC board?
Haven't done that yet, right? The board's gonna decide at the next meeting.
Any further discussion? Right, Deborah, we're ready for roll call.
Walker,
Yes?
Bentley,
Yes.
Bollinger,
Yes.
Dowling,
Yes.
Color,
Yes.
Register, yes, and Shaw.
Yes.
That's unanimous.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And so last item on the agenda, resources and timeline.
Yes, all right. So keep in mind, we still have some fluidity here, right? Because we don't know exactly with my Rossmore where that's going to land. But what I'm trying to do is give you a sense for the big projects, what you saw on that outline, what we're looking at in terms of timeline. So the marketing website, if everything went really well, the expectation would be that we could launch in February of next year. Part of the reason it's February, because I actually think we could be ready in January, is we're gonna need a little bit longer with my Rossmore, and those two have to go together. Because we're taking so much information for the residents off of rossmore.com, we need for it to be over on the other website before we launch. So those two have to go together. As you can see, the resident portal end of this is a very big piece. And so it is the most time consuming.
Could you point out the colors?
I'm sorry, green is your marketing website, so that's your top line. The brighter blue one that's next, that is the myrossmore.com portion of it. So you're looking at staff and web developer time, as well as then the actual website development, and then staff going out the actual.
And does that timeline include the communications And readiness and
That's-
training and all that.
Yes,
stuff.
that's coming a little bit lower. It's its own bullet point or its own part on the timeline. Assessing the rebrand and the name parts that go with this. Really, this is the part I wanted to talk a little bit about. This is a lot. These are really big pieces. You're talking about launching off an entire marketing website, a whole new myrossmore.com. There's going to be a communication plan that goes with this. To do a rebrand at the same time is extensive. If you remember and I can bring it up again if you'd like, the spreadsheet that I showed you last week of all the different pieces where the GRF name or MOD name is used, it's extensive. It's everything from email signatures to stationery, business cards, to signs, everything. To essentially ask two people in my department to run this is probably, it's too much. I will be the first one to admit, it's just too much to do these in tandem. So if we want the rebrand to happen in tandem, I do need to ask that we perhaps relook at how we're doing the RFP for a marketing website and look for a rebranding expert, a specialist who does rebranding and the website at the same time. The real change in that will be how the RFP is written, because we would be looking at somebody who can help us push out the rebrand and help us also with the work that's involved with that, meaning that we have somebody who can go to the various departments with the templates, help us develop what those templates look like, and then go to the departments to actually roll out that change. If we don't, this timeline needs to change, meaning that I either need to push out the websites and completion of that work, or I need to push out the rebrand. But it's, again, because of the amount of work that's involved here, it's just too much for a department of my size. Again, remember, communications is putting out the newspaper, is running the TV stations, is doing all of the websites, is doing some of the internal marketing and all of the internal communications. As well as whenever newspapers on the outside catch wind of something with Rossmore, I'm involved with that as well.
Well, and I think those are two distinct things. I would hesitate to put them together in an RFP just because it's really kind of apples and oranges in my view. And I'm wondering if there isn't a staff task force, Jeff, that could be used in this rebranding push out, because a lot of this is internal. Some of it is external, and you need to certainly be a part of that. But 90% of that list is internal. And why that would all fall on your shoulders, I don't know why, but I'm not looking to solve that at this point in time.
I'm kind of building on it. And maybe this is something that you've already thought of, so that the website, both of the websites would include the rebranding that's relative to those projects, correct?
That's
So what you're talking about is the replacement of anything old with what's appropriate.
correct.
If you let it be ad hoc for a while, so let's say that you just made the communication and said, here it is, here's the guide. You know, do you still, and then waited, that, because some things will, you know, we talked about a little bit about like, okay, if your business card needs to be, well, maybe the business card's not the right thing, because some of those things have to be completely redesigned. And maybe that's what you're talking about. But if there is something like, well, I can just put up this new guide, I can change my color to blue, but it used to be red or something like that. Would that still be, are you anticipating
So-
there's still gonna be so many questions?
There has to be a point person, right? So if Julie, Kelly and purchasing says, okay, what exactly, I have this brand guide, but what exactly, here's what we're doing with the uniforms. Can you help me figure out what this is actually supposed to look like? You're talking about the usage, right? For a brand guide, it's the same kind of thing. Who's that point person? And it's really easy to say, oh, well, every department's gonna figure it out. It's not going to happen. Every department's gonna say, I've been told to figure this out. Can you help me figure it out? I just don't. So I'm trying to kind of anticipate where this is gonna go so that we don't. And again, you know, we've talked about it, the FAQ. I've been working on that, but that has to be developed out. When we're talking about the piece that's coming later, when you're communicating the rebrand internally and externally, that messaging really does start and with my department. You want that consistency. There are others that I certainly tap and pull into that. Certainly the senior staff managers are going to be really pulled into that. But it really does start with me because I'm the one who's been at this table here with all of you. So again, it's looking at those pieces. You have the initial part of communication that comes now, but then you have the really big piece. That's the one that looks like it's orange. So that's your internal initial communication with staff. And then it's also the actual implementation with staff as well that comes later. Same thing, the little light blue one is doing external communication, getting it into the hands of the real estate agents and the vendors. There's an initial phase, and then there's really sort of that hard, okay, everybody should be using the emails now, everyone should be using the business cards, etc.
So your alternative, so your first choice is bundle. Your second choice is just let things ride until next February, and then you start another effort. Is that?
That's kind of where again, I don't want to stall it that long. I'll say that up front. But if we don't bundle, if I don't have some assistance, somebody who can really help me with those pieces, somebody where I can say, oh, okay, John's gonna help you with that. John's on staff with us for the next 8 months to help work with this. John will help guide you through that. I have to have a person, a go-to.
I understand what you're saying. I guess one of the positives about postponing that is I do think that the web, particularly the myrossmore.com piece, is that it's going to serve as a pipe cleaner for pushing out. I mean, some of your list is pretty comprehensive, but there's also in some of those areas some sub decisions that need to be made. And by doing them simultaneously, some of them you might be doing twice. If you do I mean, it is really only 10 months. It's not, given how long that the world has been in this, kind of more variegated way. I think you might find that by the time that you're in February, a lot of stuff has already been worked through and makes that effort a lot easier. Otherwise, I think maybe one of the things that could happen is whoever your point person is, an internal person or subcontractor, they're gonna have to keep coming back and saying like, oh, well, we're not gonna do that until this page is done. So I think that there might be some efficiency.
So the one,
by waiting.
yeah, the one thing I'll say again with to your point, if you have an actual rebrand implementation expert, they're used to doing this, so they understand as you're rolling out the pieces with the website, these other pieces should be rolled out at the same time because they're interconnected. My specialty is websites. I know websites inside and out. I can tell you exactly what the trends are, what we should be doing, and where to go with that. I've never done a rebrand. It's not to say that I can't do plenty of reading and figure this out and get this off the ground. But I will say it is going to that piece of it is going to require a lot more of my time and my effort. And that's why I'm saying I cannot do it at the same time. That marketing website is too important.
Yeah, we're getting into operational.
Yeah, sorry,
I think
but
with the task force, if I could make a recommendation, is that we don't want to combine these into one RFP. If you need more resources to help with this effort, by all means, let's bring that forward to the
Okay.
board. And so bring a recommendation for the next meeting.
I'll do that.
In that regard. I would like to see the brand rename happen as soon as possible. I realize might be some efficiencies, but I think if we're gonna make these recommendations now, we want to do like the food and beverage study, wait 8 months to actually make decisions. I think it's important that we show some results. So if we could think in terms of how can we make this happen as quickly as possible. Otherwise, the timeline that Ann has outlined here, I think is very doable. That by January 1, we'll be ready with new websites for external marketing and for internal myrossmore.com. Anybody disagree with any of that? Okay. If not, anything else for the good of the marketing task force? Being done, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Think in the middle.
Yes, next meeting is the 13th and 4th.